with that 2-1 defeat at Burton, Cambridge United's stay in League One comes to an end. The end of a chapter full of brilliant memories, but ending in a season of disappointment from basically the first kick all the way through to the last. Welcome as always to Under the Abbey Stand, and an episode we've known has been coming for a long while. Tom, this isn't the nicest episode to do, is it? As much as we've kind of mentally been preparing for it for maybe 6 months?
I would say probably, it's probably fair to say we should have been preparing for this since the week before the start of the season.
That's
when we
good.
got beaten when we got beaten 6-0 by Colchester.
It's so funny you say that, you know. Sorry for that, just popped up the other day somewhere, and I was like, "Oh yeah, that was a real thing that happened the week before the season started."
Yeah, I mean, I know it's pre-season. I know it's not. People maybe look at the lineups and go, "It's not our full strength 11." You are still being beaten 6-0 by a team that finished, I think, mid-table in the division below. I put it to you, probably not a great sign of what's to come. The summer was a mess. And what followed wasn't much better, to be honest. And yeah, I mean, the first day of the actual season, I think as soon as Louis Barry scored and lobbed Reyes from like 40 yards out.
Oh yeah, forgot about that.
Yeah, I forgot about that as well.
I think there were a few understanding looks being exchanged in the away, and like, yeah, it's gonna be tough, isn't it? It's gonna be tough, this. So yeah, nobody's coming for a while. Famously, it's the hope that kills you, and if it's not a last minute winner at Huddersfield, it's Bristol Rovers getting beat, and if it's not Bristol Rovers getting beat, it's getting yourself back in the game at Burton to give you the slimmest of slim hopes that it might still be on. And yeah, unsurprisingly, we fell short.
Casper, is it nice to be put out your misery?
You know what? It sort of is. Do you know what I mean? Has anyone else had that?
I've had
sort
that.
Of like a weird sense of relief. Like, been like flirting with it for a few seasons in a row. You see all these posts where like league table of the last 3 seasons, and we're like bottom of the whole EFL in like many of these instances, if you know what I mean, like away wins or something, whatever it is. So yeah, I guess maybe we'll be competitive in League Two, so everything's going to be fine.
Well, maybe. Let's. There's going to be a time and a place to talk about next season. A lot of the summer will be spent, I think, building up our bullishness for next season.
10 pods talking about Newport away.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Away.
Oh, whatever you do, don't go look at like mid-table in League Two right now, because it's not a nice list of teams to look forward to for next year.
Just can't wait.
But we've got this relegation to talk through. We've obviously talked through a lot of the things we're going to touch on today at various points throughout the year. Casper, it's nearly 20 years to the day since our last relegation. Saturday was, it was the 23rd of April 2005. I'm not going to say how far we've come. I just want to ask, you all remember that day?
It could be worse.
It could be worse.
It could be worse. It could be worse.
It could be Carlisle travelling to Truro. But yeah. You will remember that day much better than me and Tom will. How does this compare to that day?
I mean, God, it's a long time ago. That day was obviously pretty weird. I think someone put this on the message board the other day. Every other time we've been relegated in our history, there's been like massive off-field problems that were almost like, or some kind of catalyst for the relegation, like the gate receipt split and stuff like that. Certainly when we got relegated last time, we were an omni shambles, I guess, a complete mess. I think that led to us only having 4 contracted players for the following season. And the feeling this time, I guess, is distinctly different, right? So I guess probably in the history of all the relegations we've got on our slate, this might be the one that we can be the most optimistic about. Is that like a nice angle to go for?
I think so.
I mean, that day 20 odd years ago was just totally grim. And we were still in that kind of existential place of like, does that mean no more football club whatsoever? So, and obviously dropping out of the Football League altogether is pretty grim.
Of course,
yeah. I think in terms of all the relegations available to us, or certainly from our history, I guess this is like the best one. Not celebrating it, obviously, but I guess there's a feeling in a sense that when they hired Harris and Bonner, part of that narrative already was around preparing for a League Two campaign anyway. could argue we maybe went a bit early on that narrative, I think, as a club. But at least that means they'll have been thinking about it already. They'll have been preparing for it already. I'm hoping the club will obviously push some good news out about redevelopment in the next few weeks, trying to sort of build up a bit of excitement as well. And I guess you can sort of start to form this feeling that as and when we get back into League Two, might be in a redeveloped Abbey or a redeveloping Abbey. Obviously with our new crest and our massive new global sponsor, TBC. Still don't know who that's going to be. So I guess different to that relegation, there's quite a lot to still be optimistic about, whereas last time there wasn't much to be optimistic about at all, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that optimism is an important thing, especially looking forward. Um, Tom, I'm interested just in your feelings on the full-time whistle at Burton. Obviously, aside from the game itself, we'll touch on that briefly, but later in the pod. But just your general feelings at confirmation of being relegated. Like on what Casper was saying, the way I felt, I'm interested to see if you felt the same, is I'd sort of felt like I'd gone through the cycle of the sort of stages of grief earlier in the season, and in a way kind of the club had, right, in the sense that we'd already sort of done our refresh kind of in February by hiring Harris and Bonner when we did. So in a way this has just felt like the actual sort of execution, if you know what I mean, was probably in January. So I'm not sure on full time I felt anything beyond a bit of maybe apathy or just a bit of, oh well, that's been coming.
There's definitely a bit of that. And I think a lot of the frustrations that I had at full time were around. It felt like it was a kind of a perfect storm almost of a lot of the things that we moaned about for the last God knows how many months, all coming on the same day. Um, whether it's things around lacking in certain areas in terms of the personnel, um, certain players not covering themselves in glory individually, basic mistakes at the back, not being able to convert chances when they come, not being able to capitalise on moments when you have an opportunity. And I mean, not just in terms of our game, but also the Bristol Rovers result earlier on. And look, let's have it right. If we'd have gone to Burton and beaten them, anything other than like a really convincing win, we probably would have been relegated on Tuesday in the evening as this pod obviously comes out. So that'd be something to look forward to. But you, it just felt like we kind of had an opportunity to just keep yourself in it, and we weren't able to do that. I think I probably agree with a lot of what you guys have said around the feelings going into next season. I felt a lot better having seen Neil Harris's post-match interview, and that's been the case on a lot of occasions. Because to be honest, we should get him on again because he just loves slagging these players off. I love it.
He's probably second after us in terms of loving that.
Yeah,
slagging off the players.
It's brilliant. He's just like, what's going on? I can't trust them. Like that sort of thing. And actually, maybe we shouldn't get him on. That's had a bad impact in the past.
Yeah. Bad omen.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think one of the things that I thought, and it's I kind of found myself, creating little hypothetical situations in my head, and one of those, which is a very realistic one that could have happened, is there is a very realistic alternate universe where that post-match interview is done by Gary Monk. And you've had an absolute bin fire of an end to the season. Like at least we put a bit of respectability on it, by being at least difficult to beat, in the last part of the season, and we've given ourselves, if very faint, some hope in some ways at some stages. And if you are stood there and you have Gary Monk as manager and you go down into League Two, I mean, there's obviously two teams that got relegated last season who have gone in very different directions. Obviously, one in Carlisle who've gone straight through, and they're obviously now going to be playing conference football next season, and one in Port Vale who bounced straight back. The fact that we have someone like Neil Harris there instead of someone like Monk or another manager, it gives me a lot of confidence that we can be the Port Vale in that scenario rather than being the Carlisle. And you know what? It's not something that I like doing. It's not something that I think we particularly like doing as a pod. And you go back and you go, well, we'd have taken this and we'd have taken that. And if you look back to this point in time, you'd have taken where we're at. I think if you look back to the conversation we had when we were promoted into League One, I think we all accepted there was a likelihood we would be back in League Two at some stage in the relatively near future. And the mission was basically go down in a situation where you're confident you can come back. And I think that's sort of where we're at. So that's kind of a positive out of what has obviously been a real negative of a season. Um, but yeah, look, we've been relegated, right? It's bad, and I think the frustration is that for all the hype we had around this season in terms of the strength of the league, and it felt like it was an impossible task. You're watching Burton Albion celebrate survival basically, and you kind of got. I know their budget is not what you might expect of a club of Burton Albion size. It's probably better than what we might otherwise expect, but it's Burton Albion, And if you're telling me that they can sustain League One football, there's no reason why we can't. And that's the frustration, and that's where I think missed opportunity is probably the word, but I just think it's been a bit of a failing, really. At kind of all levels, and thankfully we've rectified it. Like, again, I'm making comparisons, and I know that ideally you just focus on yourself and you focus on what your own club does. But I guess in many ways, the nature of football is that you are constantly comparing yourself to teams that you're coming up against and competing against. The other one is Bristol Rovers. Like, if you look at what's happened to their season, it's kind of done the opposite. Like, it started okay and it's absolutely imploded, and they'll go down and they'll be thinking, what on earth did we do next? Whereas at least we've got a bit of clarity about what comes next, and we've got a bit of clarity about what the next steps are. And I would agree with what Caspel said, that we probably went a little bit early on the whole let's plan for next season thing, because that was very much implied throughout the interviews that Bonner and Harris did when they came back. But at least we've been able to plan for this, and at least we've given ourselves a few more weeks. It's been pretty on the cards, I think. Well, all season, like we've just said, but certainly since Wigan away. So, yeah, a culmination of things, really. Quite frustrated on full time, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, four teams are going to be relegated, and we're always likely to be among them. Unfortunately, that's just the way that the division is. But I think we go down with at least a bit of optimism that we can give bouncing back a pretty good go next season with the current regime.
Just watch this. Honestly, watch this age like milk in like 8 months' time when we're
Harris has walked in October.
Yeah. It's going to be, we have to clip this one up and just play it back. It'll be great.
Yeah, you mentioned two clubs that went down last year, Tom, Vale and Carlisle. The other one is Cheltenham, who I think are 14th in League Two, which I think for a lot of people might be
beautiful,
quite a natural landing spot.
Cheltenham did lose the manager that was so inspiring to them, though.
Very true. You're not wrong. I'm just trying to make a joke, Tom.
Don't. This isn't a time for jokes. This is a time for getting stuck into each other.
Honestly, we'll finish 15th, and then someone will pipe up and they'll be like, well, Carlisle went all the way through. So it's not so bad.
It could be worse. Yeah.
Oh, God.
That's true. Well, look, let's go into this in a bit more detail. Caspel, I'll give you the first stab at this. Where's it gone wrong for you in the long list of things? We actually got this in from Richard on X, which I think is quite a good little summary of a list.
I was going to say quite a good platform there.
Well, there's that. It's gone downhill a bit.
Richard's done 8 different things.
He's done 8 different things. 1, lack of even half decent goalkeeper. 2,
Fair.
Monk. 3, not sacking Monk earlier. 4, 8 to 10 week injury bingo. 5, too many loan players. 6, lack of striker. 7, Sky Sports Plus money. 8, Harris for walking away, in brackets, sadly. I assume he's talking about Harris walking away the first time.
Yeah, we've not missed something.
Not the second time.
Yeah. Oh, geez. Yeah. Hold on. Let me look at my phone. No, it's good.
How much do you agree on with Richard there? And is there anything in particular that's sticking out that's maybe lower down his list, higher on yours, or anything?
Mate, he's missed the crucial moment, I think. Do you remember when Gary Monk was linked with the South Korea job?
I do.
Niels, that obviously turned his head. That's what I think happened.
3 great things you reminded me of. Losing 6-0 at Colchester in the last game of pre-season. Louis Barry screaming to start the season, and Gary Monk being linked to the South Korea job.
I'll tell you what, Caspel, in hindsight, it would have been a much better move for his career, though, don't you think?
Very good.
No, it's bad.
It's all gone south since then.
Yeah.
Mate, let's send him to North Korea instead. He seems like a nice guy. I can't go through all 8 of these from Richard. I think I looked at it earlier, blaming Harris for walking away last season and expecting a football club from February to get their shit together and not get relegated the following season is
not a big ask, I'm going to say.
It's a bit like blaming a striker who's given the ball away and the corner flag for the goal he just conceded with all the other 10 people in the way. So, and I'm not just defending Harris for the sake of it, but
If we'd have gone down last season, an absolutely legitimate thing to blame.
100%.
I would
Yeah,
say.
100%. But we did famously stay up. So,
Just about.
yeah, I just about. So I don't think we can do that one. I mean, I think it all comes back to two places, right? One is recruitment. And I think it's easy to get really basic with the recruitment stuff because obviously our budget is not mega competitive for League One. So my issue with the recruitment isn't that, this will sound a bit weird, it isn't that they've signed a bunch of guys that aren't good enough to compete at League One level, which I know sounds ridiculous. It's more the profile and the approach, right? The thought process of the recruitment was just like wrong, if you know what I mean. And it's been faulty for a few years because we just seem to have, in the main, we seem to have signed as permanent players, people who've kind of played like, what's the profile? You played 150 games in the Championship, maybe even a bit of Prem.
Bit of an injury record.
Bit of an injury record.
A big bit of an injury record as well.
Yeah, true.
Right.
Yeah.
Probably a significant injury record. You're maybe 31, 32. So your career is like, you know, it's alive still. But you kind of
massive wages.
Sorry, big wages. But Cambridge United, you know, on your Wikipedia page or whatever, you've played for like some pretty big clubs. And then Cambridge United is at the bottom of that list in two ways. One, chronologically, and two, by stature of clubs. So for several of these guys, we will be the smallest club they've ever played for. Towards the end of their career, they're probably sort of, some of them, I mean, they're wondering like, how have I ended up here? Do you know what I mean? How was my career? You know, I'm only 32, 31 or whatever it is. How have I ended up at Cambridge United? And it's just totally wrong as a profile of player to have the ratio of those guys in that squad. I think you can have 2 or 3 maybe max in a squad, players who fit that profile, because they bring a huge amount to the table, right? In terms of technical ability, quality, experience. Like,
we also over-indexed in one particular area of the pitch. I mean, you described 4 of our 5 centre mids.
Yeah, I did. I'm trying to not.
It's like such a crucial
cryptic clues with the ages and stuff. Yeah,
but it's funny, isn't it? Like even just looking at one area of the pitch, obviously such a crucial area of the pitch, and you end up with that profile so heavily dominant in the profile of centre mids we've got.
But like, what's the average age of that team? You know, some of those starting 11s is like, this is just a bit of a mess, really. I'll also just put my neck out. There's no way we're going to, I don't think Footmob or anyone has this. I reckon we have the slowest, like physically slowest squad in League One this season, if you know what I mean.
I won't disagree with that, yeah.
So hard to argue against, obviously hard to prove as well, but I just have a gut feeling. They're also not very tall, if you know what I mean. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, I know they're talking now about doing it with data and stuff. That sounds good, but it's like, think of the physical composition of a squad, particularly with a Neil Harris manager now, is like, if they're physically good in terms of fast or strong or both, ideally, tall is good, not all over the place, but it's good to have some height in your squad. We were unlucky with some injuries, obviously, so unlucky with Joe, but like, get someone with a real long throw. Like, I'm okay if we want to sign an okay League Two footballer who has like a cannon for a throw and can throw the ball on a flat angle to the penalty spot, because it will become dangerous. Like, I don't mind if we want to become a bit of a, you know, set piece team or whatever. All of that is fine. I just think there's that element to the recruitment in terms of profile of player, and then the injury part is massive. So there's 2 sides to this. One is we actually have been genuinely unlucky with injuries, because some of them have been, you know, legitimately unfortunate, but too many of them have just been like recurrent or, you know, old injuries that are sort of resurfacing. So like Lavery is probably the very best example, because I know one of the things that could be said about this squad is that we didn't have a goal scoring striker. You know, we're all single digits all over the board, which is no good. Kachunga, top scorer, is a mess, to be honest. Like, no offense to the bloke, but like, that's a problem in its own right.
Do we get anything for that?
What? Your preseason prediction, Tom?
A refund, Tom.
A refund.
Yeah.
You predicted it pre-season. You said Kachunga 9, which was dangerously apt. Yeah, very on target.
Turns out he predicted our top goal scorer to finish with 9 goals. Somehow was too ambitious.
Yeah. Whoa. Give him time.
Yeah. He's got 1 game left, Tom.
The Birmingham game approaches, mate.
Come on.
Just on the injuries thing though, quickly, like a point I wanted to pick up on there, Casper, which I think it's important to remember. like also the timeline of the season, because I remember being sat with you in about January on a preview pod, and we were talking through injuries. And at the time, our injury list was actually all the usual suspects in inverted commas, all the guys who we'd signed, Lavery, Taylor Richards, Gary Gardner, etc., who had injury records and predictably got injured, right? And I think at the time I remember saying something along the lines of like, it's not that we've got unlucky with injuries, it's just we've had no luck because we've signed the profile of people who get injured and they've just all predictably got injured, if that makes sense. But since then I think the next week Corey Smith got injured, Danny Andrew got injured, then players with reliable records
Oh, but
started
some
getting
is
injured.
mental. Like
And
we
but then
we
it got
signed
unlucky.
Morosi, and then he just
That's what I mean.
blows up. We signed Scott Malone, and his season gets ended. You just like some of it is legitimately
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying
bad luck,
in
if
that
you know what
little
I mean.
couple of weeks in like towards the end of January, it was genuine bad luck. There were players who didn't have a bad injury record going out and getting injured for 8 to 10 weeks at a time. True,
All of them,
all of them.
everyone. The diagnosis was easy, wasn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And then the other bit, I won't go too long, and I'll let Tom get stuck into it. I'm not even sure it was hiring Gary Monk because he's sort of like on paper, it's a decent appointment. Again, it sort of weirdly matches the profile of some of the playing squad, right? It's like
Yeah.
he's got some Prem experience and Championship experience.
He'd never managed in League One, as low as League One,
Yeah.
never below the
Sort
He
of
was injured all the
sense-
time as well.
He's injured all the time, yeah. Sort of sense that I guess this sense that because he has great experience, he would have good contacts, would be able to sign these, some interesting players like Gary Gardner, I guess. So there's a bit of that, and obviously South Korea sniffing around, that creates a bit of buzz, apparently. So do you know what? I can live with signing him, but I cannot understand how he wasn't removed from that job earlier. And that isn't a hindsight thing because we've been saying it all season, and even last season there was a touch of it. I don't understand. The thing is, the club has obviously modelled itself on this like, we don't want to be managerial merry-go-round. We were pretty unfortunate with the Harris situation first time around. And so we're going to stick by this guy. The underlying data is good. Hasn't taken us very far, the underlying data. But, there was enough to sort of get on board with. So even after the Exeter game, I can sort of understand it. And then obviously went on that really good run. Well, I say really good run. Brief, decent run that even some of the wins at the end were kind of thready, like Woking and Burton. So really we won 3 games with clean sheets, and then we started to sort of show some cracks anyway. But I don't understand. I mean, the whole thing kind of comes together, right? It all comes to a head, that Bristol Rovers game, which is the moment they've decided they're going to give him a transfer window and I don't know, and see what he does with it, but then not really, because he's gone anyway a few weeks later. So
exactly
that for me was the moment. It's probably around, it should have been in my head probably after the Leyton Orient game. Felt to me like, right, transfer window approaching. Let's do something because, he's got to pull one of the levers, and rightly or wrongly, fairly or unfairly, usually it's the manager is like the most dispensable thing, the quickest, most impactful change you can make. As it happens, he totally deserved to go at that point anyway. So I think, 2 things for me. One is long-term recruitment strategy has been a mess, frankly, for a number of years as well. And then last season, willingness or desire to stick with Monk way, way too long. I mean, you could easily make a case to get rid of him after that Exeter game. Easily make a case to get rid of him, November, December time, once that decent run had like petered out, to be honest.
It feels like an obvious thing to say, but if you're making 2 statements within 3 months backing a manager, maybe the manager's not good enough.
It's just obduracy, though, isn't it? It's this desire. We spoke about it a few weeks ago. It's this, and there were people clapping at the end of the Burton game, clapping the players off, and you're like, our appetite to be a nice football club is superseding sometimes our ability, even, or a desire to be like a sustainable, competitive League One, like, let's have a look at the Championship football club. Frankly, like, there's a middle ground to be struck, and we've got to find our way there, I think.
Yeah, I don't disagree, Tom. Same sort of question for you. I might just pose this question that we had in from Steve, or opinion, I guess. In a list of many things, I can't quite understand our goalkeeping strategy. Dimmy leaves, we sign Stevens, reviews aren't very good in brackets. Ignore Mannion, then we sign an international under-23 loan keeper. We don't replace Stevens. Reyes leaves in January. which other clubs have played four keepers in a season? Obviously, worth saying that the asterisks on Morosi, and worth saying that it's not quite the magic five, unless something.
It could be.
It could be, yeah, it
There's a
could
lot
be.
of chat. There's a lot of JJ Briggs chat for this weekend. So
Yeah, what a great sentence! Sounds like we're talking about NBA or something. But Tom, the keepers, there was a great article, one of the stats articles that Ben did, where he picked out Reyes. This is in about November time as being hugely at fault for a lot of the goals we're conceding, and a big cause of why we were losing so many games. Where do you put goalkeeping? Obviously, it's part of that recruitment thing, but are you laying a lot of blame at the door of just not being fully equipped in that department going into the season?
It's got to be one of them. I think. I think the Reyes signing probably sums up again like a lot of the issues that we've had, because that was one of the transfers that made you think we're sort of trying to back Monk, but we're just not doing it very well, because it feels like for managers that want to play in that sort of style, the goalkeeper is now like a really important part of it. But get it right. Like, I mean, again, like even from the first day, like the question marks around him. 5 minutes in, he gets lobbed from like 40 yards. And at the time, I was kind of the opinion like it's just a brilliant strike, the goal that Louis Barry scored. But if your goalkeeper's been brought into question that early on, alarm bells are sort of ringing. And I think again, like it mirrors a lot of the strategy of kind of building the squad that we've had probably since that first season back, and the summer of that first season back in League One. There was never any sort of long term sustainable thinking about how we were going to build a squad that could bed itself in and start to progress in League One, because the strategy basically just became, well, we're having to replace the entire squad every season. We're turning over 10, 11 players every summer. And you look at some of the players that we gave contract extensions to, like Rossi, bizarrely, and I know that I'm going away from the goalkeeper thing here, but it's a similar sort of principle. Like bizarrely, you give a contract extension to Rossi, who's barely played, and when he has played, he's been pretty poor, and like Jack Lancaster, who never really proved himself, not on a consistent basis. Whereas you lose Nibs and Smith for nothing. You can't build progressively like that. You can't build sustainably like that, and I think that's where a lot of the issues come from. And look, obviously, you can't force people to sign contracts, and I understand that, but like. End of that first season back, right? Nibs is showing incredible potential. Get him down to 2 or 3 years then. And then you've got a saleable asset where, all right, you're going to lose him at some point, but you're being rewarded for it. You're getting a transfer fee in, and at least you can reinvest it into the next one that comes along. With the goalkeeper, like, what sort of goalkeeper did we want? You end up with Jack Stevens or Reyes. How is that the
What's that?
situation?
Yeah, yeah.
Totally different. And I think I think you asked me a question about goalkeepers. I'm sort of going on in various different tangents here. I think what Casper said about the hiring of Monk, I think, is fair. Um, he was evidently the wrong appointment for the football club, because the ideas that he had were simply just above our station for our budget, and he was just clearly not a good enough manager to be able to implement what he wanted to implement. Um, but it meant that there was a real conflict in a name that we've not mentioned yet, someone like Ben Strang, the way that he has traditionally tried to build a squad and the sort of football that he's been able to build a squad to play, and what someone like Gary Monk wanted to do. So you've got a director of football who's not really sure that he's recruiting players that he wants to recruit, or for a style or sort of coaching, um, sort of ethos that he wants to recruit towards, and a manager who's then left with a set of players who he's not really suited to either. So it was all a mesh from the start. The goalkeeper is a good example of that, but yeah, it's just been. I think Harris leaving through us, and one of the things that we discussed at the time was that maybe it's worth just getting an interim in until the end of the season, then really assessing it, and then you give yourself, at worst, you give yourself sort of a 2 or 3 month period to really assess options and go out and get somebody longer term, or you hire a good interim who then you give it to on a permanent basis and you go from there. What we did was the sort of middle of that and the worst of both worlds. We hired a manager who probably wasn't going to stick around long term, but you kind of got to change the strategy for, and that's where it's all gone wrong, I think, for me.
Can I read out this that came in from Mark, and just get your take on it, because it's kind of along what you're saying with Monk, Harris, recruitment. It's sort of this whole. This is his take. He says, "For me, it started just over a year ago, where our current manager left high and dry and in turmoil. The board took a big risk to change the narrative of our play then and didn't back the new manager in the summer. They gave him time and again didn't back him properly in January. Monk from last August was on a career suicide mission. We then rehired the manager who left us high and dry, who came in with 45 points left on the table and won 4 games. The players didn't have enough character in them to dig in and be better. Relegation ensued. I don't blame Monk. He wasn't given proper tools to do a job. I won't blame Harris yet, but for all his comments, if Harris doesn't deliver quickly next year, he can go in the failure bucket too. Lots to unpack there, Tom, but where do you stand on with Mark's sentiment?
Let me just tuck my serviette into my collar here so I get really stuck into this.
Mate, Gary Monk, career suicide. You don't get linked with a South Korea job if you're on a downer, do you, mate? Jesus.
I don't really know where to begin with this one. I think the idea that you could somehow not attribute any blame to Gary Monk for this season and somehow attribute some blame to Neil Harris, I think is remarkable. I think it's an incredibly blinkered opinion, to be honest. And it all comes from the fact that there's still a lingering resentment towards Harris for what played out last season. And I kind of get that to an extent, but you've got to open your eyes and see what's actually happened. If we're saying that Gary Monk wasn't given the tools to do his job, I'll point to this. Harris came in straight away and has got about 25% more out of these players than what Monk was doing before him. 4 wins from available 45 points. That's the same amount that Monk got from the first, 32 games or something?
Yeah.
So, we're talking about the impact of a manager here. Monk did an awful job. Awful job. I think the first time that I think we were delaying pods because we were like, surely he's going to get sacked at some point, like as early as September.
I was like, September.
That's in September, yeah. After Lincoln and Mansfield and stuff, yeah.
I mean, we can't put all the blame on Monk, clearly, because look, I think a better squad of players, naturally the level's a little bit higher in terms of the points return that we get from it. I think that's fairly obvious, and we've picked apart and we've picked apart, we've poured over our issues with the recruitment, and that'll go on. That'll be something that we'll have to speak about again. I guess at times. Yeah, I think, and then even if you look at the end of the end of the, well, it's sort of a question. It's sort of an opinion, but the end of that bit, it's already getting on Harris's back, and this is something that we've got to stamp out as well. Going into next season, this idea that Neil Harris somehow owes us something and owes us one going into next season. Nah, not at all. Not at all.
The thing I really want to pick out of this is right at the start, left us high and dry and in turmoil. Not sure he left us in turmoil. I mean, it was a strange thing.
He left us in a good position.
We were 17th in the league.
Right?
Yeah.
And what followed that? And I do kind of understand what he's saying because, and to be honest, it's something that we talked about, towards the end of last season as well. Clearly, the turning point last season was when Neil Harris left. I think that's fair. And what followed Neil Harris leaving, I think, was 4 losses in a row, 2 of which against Stevenage, 1 against Posh, where we scored no goals. So clearly, it had an impact. And the football club, I think, collectively shat its pants and went out and hired the first manager who had managed at a decent level and had a recognisable name. I'm simplifying that, but I don't think I'm simplifying it too much to what actually would have happened. The real problem is not Neil Harris leaving. The real problem is appointing the wrong manager, realistically. And if we'd have gone out and appointed somebody else, somebody more competent, somebody who fit with what the football club has been and will be, in terms of its style, in terms of its approach, I'm quite confident that we would have given this season a better go, regardless of the players that were available. Gary Monk was getting 0.7 points a game. That's dreadful.
It's bad, mate.
That's dreadful.
Yeah. That was like mid-80s United bad.
You're almost getting onto a level there where, and I'm kind of being a little bit flippant here, but I not that much. You get onto the point there where I think you would almost think, don't have a coach. Surely, collectively, there must be enough coaching badges that we go on about, particularly with some of those more experienced has-been centre mids that you were talking about, for example, that they could just pull together and just be like, right, this is how we're going to play, this is how we're going to set up, and we're going to have a give it a right good go. Again, I'm being a little bit flippant there, but not loads. Yeah. I don't think it would have gone that much worse.
Casper, get in there, mate.
Well, no, I was going to.
Casper hasn't got any coaching badges.
Obviously, yeah,
sorry,
my badges. Maybe I could do it.
Apologise, yeah.
Maybe I'll get South Korea.
South Korea sniffing around, yeah.
Probably end up on fucking Squid Game or something, mate. Jesus. This whole changing the way we play football thing. I know you spoke about it before, Jules. Sort of the identity of Cambridge United, the Cambridge United way. There is a feeling, I know you're going to come on to it, there's a sense I have that where's that come from? Like, has that come from Paul Barry? Is that a thing? Like, do we need to play more exciting football? And if so, for what reason? I know it sounds really dumb because we want to be entertained, we want to be excited. It's nice when the football is like good to watch. But you said it before in a pod earlier in the season. Like, do you really care? Like, I'd rather just win the games.
Yeah.
And this decision they made, I don't know whose decision it was, to be like, right, firstly, that we're going to play more entertaining football. Secondly, Gary Monk's going to be the guy to deliver it, which seems anathema. It seems completely impossible based on what we were served up. Apart from, I guess, those first sort of 6 or 7, 8 games. But like, is it exciting to just lose every week, but sort of look a bit fluent for 20 minutes and for a spell in the game? Like, I'm not sure about that. So this, like, do you remember back with Bono, to be fair, when we went top of the league away at Portsmouth mid-game when Ironside scored off his arse and then we went on to lose 4-1? It felt like that season we had the same brief into Bono, which was like, we're going to play out from the back.
Yeah.
We're going to retain the ball and we're going to try and play like free-flowing football. So it's clear that this has been a thing, like a persistent theme over the last few seasons. Rightly, intelligently, Mark Bonner walked back on it super quick. As soon as we started losing games, just reverted to type. It was like, no, we're not,
That's a good game to pick because I feel like we conceded 2 goals back to back really quick.
Oh, like
giving the ball away
from the back. It was like Mitov and maybe Greg Taylor, like
no,
by the corner
it was
flag or something like that.
Who's the left back who became
Houndstrup?
Houndstrup. It was
Houndstrup. Oh my god, it was.
I'm telling you. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that's a good point. That's a great point.
But do you know what I mean though? Because we tried a few years ago. My underlying point here is, if the attendances are growing the way they are, we're hitting like record average attendances. People are literally telling us we don't need exciting football. It's literally what the numbers are saying, right? We're getting the best ever average crowd. Like, if the crowds were going down and we're in League One, I could sort of understand this. Like, well, let's make the football itself a more exciting prospect by being a more attacking, open football team. It's just so clear from a strategic football position with the budget we have in League One that simply cannot work. We just do not possess the wealth to be a sort of attractive, free-flowing League One football team right now. The only way you're going to stay in the division, to Mark Bonner's credit, he never got us relegated, right, is by being like hard to beat and sort of
pragmatic,
undesirable to play against, coming to the Abbey unpleasant for teams, make the pitch really narrow, which is exactly what we did, take away the strengths that they have. So the clubs like Sheffield Wednesday and Ipswich and whoever it is are going to come to ours and they're going to have to fight to even get a point, if you know what I mean. That's exactly how we managed to stay in League One through those seasons, even when we were playing some really like historic big football clubs, is by doing it that way. Like, we simply cannot out football teams in this division. And that is exactly this season where it all went completely wrong, is like strategically, philosophically, and then just personnel like Gary Monk and playing staff across the whole unit, just like none of it right or really good enough. That's kind of where it's all fallen down, right?
And it's also worth remembering.
Casper, sorry, just to butt in there. I mean, that's all very reasoned analysis and a good opinion. But you see that second half against QPR?
Yeah.
Do you know what? I didn't as well. Maybe that's why. Maybe that's why. Because I couldn't.
How could you not be brought into it?
And I wasn't there, so maybe that's it.
I think I think we said it at the time as well. Like, so there was a lot of praise. And do you know what? We did actually play some really nice football in that second.
It was amazing. Let's not rewrite history.
Did we win the league?
No, we lost the game.
No, yeah, we lost the fucking game.
It was quite funny that even at the time we were like so desperate to take positives from the game that we lost. That should have been a sign in itself, shouldn't it? That
yeah.
Successful.
Utterly ineffective when it really mattered. I think that's a really good point. It's worth remembering also on that point of Bonner sort of rowing back on trying to play out from the back when it was. I mean, Monk did that himself, right? By the Wickham away,
eventually
Lincoln at home game mid-September. I know that's 6-7 games.
It's a quarter of the season, George.
I know. I'm just saying, but even him, if you're gonna, I guess it's kind of what annoyed me when we got to sort of January, where everything we talked about, you just touched on it, Casper, that everything was a bit of a mess from the way the squad's been built and what we've been trying to do with Monk. I'd rather they kept trying it though. Like, at the end of the day, it was totally unsuccessful to change it. So, like, if you've hired the manager to do that, don't get him to do something that he's not coach for what he doesn't believe in, sack him and start again if you don't believe in his ethos. That's what I'm saying. It's like, don't back Monk to do something that he doesn't believe in and doesn't want to do. And is obviously bad at, by the way. And I think that's just to go back to Mark's thing, just to wrap this up, because there's still plenty to talk about. I think he makes some points I don't necessarily disagree with, but to not blame Monk, like, at all, it seems.
It's just daft, isn't it? Like,
It's,
sorry, like
it's
it just is. It's
yeah,
daft.
I think that is playing to an agenda, and you're a bit too much there. But yeah. Right. So on this point, Casper leads us quite nicely on to Paul Barry's statement, which came out on Sunday morning. Everyone will have read it, so I don't need to go through it all. Tom, what was your reaction to the statement? And broader point, how much blame do you think lies at his door? Because he's not really been mentioned too much so far.
Well, I'll start with the second bit. I mean, my opinion is that the biggest problem and the main reason that we're getting relegated is because we didn't act sooner in getting rid of Monk. And when I say sooner, I mean like 3 months sooner. Maybe even a bit more than that, because for me, I'd have potted him after Rotherham at home, which was the game that preceded Exeter away. And I definitely would have potted him after Exeter away. And I definitely would have potted him after Huddersfield at home. And I definitely would have done it after every game over Christmas. And you see where I'm going with this. But yeah, so if you would agree with that, and your train of thought is that keeping Monk for as long as we did was the main reason that we've eventually been relegated, I presume it's the owner that makes that decision. So therefore, the blame does have to lie with Paul Barry to some extent, and Mark Green and whoever else is involved. Clearly, the words "credit in the bank" have never been more apt than when you speak about Paul Barry and Mark Green. So I think that's why people don't want to get too stuck into them, because it feels like he did it with the best of intentions, but he just got it wrong, and unfortunately, that's a decision, I guess, a sliding doors moment that we'll probably never quite know. What if we did sack Monk back in October when we could and probably should have done? We'll probably never know. The statement itself, I think, is fine. Like, I think it's good that they're open to come out and communicate. I'll use again the example of Bristol Rovers. Like, their fans seem up in arms about what's going on over there. Don't think they've had any much, if any, communication from their owners, which in itself is something that would be quite concerning. And it doesn't say anything that you don't expect. It's pretty simple. It's like, look, we made mistakes, and I think we all know what he's referring to. He's referring to the recruitment and to the decision to not sack Gary Monk sooner than we did. And just like, look, we've put some decent foundations in place now. We've done we've done and we are doing a thorough football review, to make sure that some of the things that have happened this season don't happen again, and that we can become a better football club for it. And that's kind of the job of an owner, I guess. As much as it is to write the checks and to offset the losses, which is, I guess, the most important thing to survive the football club, but also to give it a bit of a vision for the future. And yeah, I guess it's kind of what you expect of Paul Barrett. It's pretty clear, pretty concise, and in a pretty bad moment gives you a bit of optimism that at least, even if he's made one fatal mistake, which was sticking with a poor coach for too long, he is still the owner of the football club that's brought us to this point. And we go down in all right shape. And you'd like to think that with someone like that managing, someone like Mark Bonner managing things, but under Paul Barry, that's a pretty good mixture, a pretty good recipe for success, hopefully. But yeah, not too much to take from it specifically, I guess.
We had this message in from Matt, which I think is kind of echoing that, which is basically says staying up 4 seasons is a reasonable achievement. But I'm trying to see this as one step back after many steps forward, and I think it's the many steps forward that Barry's credit you're referring to there. Casper, is there anything else from you on the statement in particular? I guess good to just see an owner take a bit of responsibility. Tom's already quoted it there. As he says, you'd rather hear from them than not, even if there's nothing groundbreaking in itself.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I mean, it's probably not an easy job being Paul Barry, I guess, in relation to Cambridge United, because the buck ultimately is always going to stop with him, right? Like, he is the owner, so as much as you can, I guess, lay blame at his door for the situation we've ended up in, you have to show a huge amount of gratitude to, the situation we've ended up in, right? Like, we own the Cladara. Just drop that one in there. We said we were going to use Cladara loads with the pet rest. No, I'm joking. I'm not going to name all the stats.
Trade recruitment.
That's it. Look, we own the stadium is a massive thing. They're working on this exciting redevelopment of the ground, which is definitely, definitely needed. We've kicked on massively as a club. These average attendances, like, I don't think we talk about it enough. The quality of football, or the shortfall of quality to football to growth in average attendance, is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
Can you imagine if we start playing well, but the attendances start to drop? Realize people are like sadists. We've got to play like the worst football possible.
End up in like the National League South, but with like 15,000 coming through the door. Like, what's going on?
That's it. So, like, no, I'm gonna almost stop short and say no. You can't really blame Paul Barry. Not without going full circle and sort of blaming him for the football club still being in existence. So, get sort of existential at that point, if you know what I mean.
I would argue, Caspel, given some of the things that we've been put through this season, that is maybe something to put some blame at his door for.
The blame does lie at his door. Some of the Sunday mornings where we had to do a pod.
There have been several moments. There have been a few moments where I think quietly we've sort of thought to each other, "Is there nothing else you could spend your money on, Paul?"
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's true. I mean, yeah, I guess. I mean, he's been doing it a long time, eh? It's just that same thing for me. If like, where has this idea that we have to play exciting football? Where's it come from? Has it come from him? If so, like, I'm not that bothered, and it doesn't seem to be affecting our average attendances. Like, the club match day experience is better than it's ever been, frankly, and that to me is one of the big driving forces underneath this like growth in average attendances. More kids, more families, a lot of great work from Alex Tunbridge and the guys around that unit. So, stick with that. Make that the thing that make going to the Abbey a more appealing all-round prospect as a destination for like 4 or 5 hours on a Saturday, because it will minimize the impact, frankly, of the terrible football we've had served up the last couple of years. And it clearly is doing that because the average attendances are growing anyway. So it's like, we would never get to the ground at 1 p.m, but now it's a feasible thing because we have a bar and we can all stand around and chat to each other. It doesn't feel big, but it's like, means we spend 3-4 hours on site instead of, the minimum amount of time possible. It means the club is getting the revenue. It's all simple stuff, but, keep plugging away at that. Wouldn't worry about the brand of football personally. Like, a winning team is exciting for me. Doesn't matter. Like, an ugly winning team is actually quite fun to be a part of, right? Isn't that what we did all through the late 80s, 90s? It's pretty much.
We were infamous for it, right? We were the ugliest and winningest team for 2 years.
I'd quite enjoy that personally. It was suit lofty down to a T as well.
Well, Caspel, we do have to mention our friend Ryan Loft. Obviously, no one wants to pick through this Burton game minute by minute, but there are 2 things I think we should talk about that are relevant. One is Ryan Loft. Tom, less specifically the incident, which you can do probably a good job of describing, if you don't mind, but also just, I guess, Ryan Loft and how he kind of maybe epitomises everything we've been talking about in terms of the failures of recruitment and approaching the season with the right quality right from the start.
Well, I'm just glad that we can finally put to bed the idea that you can't write players off before they've played like 50 games for you. He's delivered exactly what we thought he would. Pretty much nothing. And at times, actively a bit of a hindrance, really, to the way that we play. And I'm sure there'll be comments saying that, he's functional and, he serves a purpose and stuff. I don't buy any of that. I think that's just evidence of how low the bar has been, really, at times. He's dreadful. I'm really sorry. There's not really too much. There's not really too many kind of ways to put it than that. His red card on Saturday was laughable, really. Look, I don't think it's the worst thing that's ever happened on a football pitch. It's not Dion Dublin sticking the nut on Robbie Savage, but it's just stupidity. Like, why? Like, he's just come on. He's only been on the pitch for about 10 minutes, I think. That was a depressing sub. That was a depressing moment.
Stokes for Loft, yeah.
I looked at flash scores. I was like, oh,
same. That's exactly the same, Cassie.
All I saw has happened to cause that.
Yeah, I saw Josh Stokes walking off the pitch looking very upset, and I saw Ryan Loft walking onto it, and I was like, oh, for fuck's sake.
I thought was interesting. Well, I know we're getting onto retained. We're getting well ahead of ourselves here. is the red card is pretty soft, right? It is a red. It's one of those like by the books. He's kind of thrown an army elbow thing out at the guy, like it's not a red, but it's a red, right? Um, the way he reacts to the red, and I'm reading way too much into this. That is the reaction of someone who knows he's not going to play for the football club ever again. Genuinely, that was how I read it because he literally no reaction, just walks off. Maybe he's just super zen as a bloke. I don't know. Doesn't
got a lot of gratitude.
Doesn't fit the mental image I've built up of him just being like a bit unhinged. And maybe I'm reading way too much into it because arguably should just walk off when you get a red card. But I just felt like it was just like he just walked straight off. No, didn't say anything to anyone. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm reading too much into it.
I think you're right that he does kind of sum up a lot of the problems this season because fundamentally it's been about poor recruitment, particularly in forward areas. Like that was the theme that sort of dogged the first bit of our season. And my God, like we've only mentioned Ben Strang's name once on this. I'm sure it's not all his fault with regards to the Ryan Loft signing, but he was the sporting director, so you have to assume that he signs off on this stuff. We spend a lot of time here moaning about budgets, so we spend a lot of time moaning about money that we've got available to us. Somebody or some people inside the football club sanctioned a transfer fee for this guy.
Like, and then, go on, sorry, go on.
Like, no, go on, no, you do it.
I was just going to say, and then they sat down to go, how long should we have him for? 1, 2, 3. No, 4.
Maybe 4.
4.
Maybe 4.
Honestly, if they'd signed him on deadline day, a bit like Ndula, if they'd signed him at like, 11 p.m. on deadline day, be like, right, it's very obvious what's happened here. We've like,
you've had your pants pulled down.
We've missed the boat on a load of other people, and we're going to get this guy because he was on the list.
We signed him in July.
I know. He was like one of the first 4-year deal, one of the first.
I will never, to be fair, like, there, you know what, we obviously spent a lot of time together during the summer, following England during the Euros around Germany. A lot of great memories of that tournament. Maybe none more so than when we were stood in the concourse in Dortmund, away in the semi-final against the Netherlands. One of us refreshed our phone and saw his news that we'd signed Ryan Loft, and we were like, "Oh dear!"
I've never seen your face drop so much as when you were reading it.
Sorry, say that again.
4 years.
Yeah. Look, I mean, and again, like it's I think I know there's a couple of notable examples of this, and people point to like Devon White, maybe Daryl Clare still gets a shout. I think Loft is probably the worst signing we've ever made. I think huge. Maybe taking all into consideration. I mean, realistically, it probably is Devon White because the context of it is hilarious. Like, you actually trade who is now our all-time top goal scorer for someone and paid their money as well. But in like the proper modern era, it's got to be Loft. I mean, stupidity on Saturday delivered exactly what we expected, which is just a poor footballer playing well out of his depth. And I don't think that changes when we go down into League Two either, by the way. And yeah, I mean, talk about retained lists.
Hey, but Lofty, bear in mind, I'm so sure about this as well. I think, remember, I've been banging on about this all season. He has the highest velocity per goal for Cambridge United in the history of Cambridge United.
How do you know that? Is that
it's just gut feel.
Oh,
name another player. Name me another player. Let's say who scored more than one goal, just to make it. He's got to score 2 or more goals that have had a higher like average like speed from boot to back of net. Because both the goals he scored, he hit super hard.
I reckon Liam O'Neill might have a shout for this.
Nah, it's got to be a tap in or a header in there somewhere. Do you know what I mean?
Well, he did score a bit of a tap in on the day we got promoted against Grimsby, but he absolutely thundered it
in. The goal in Port Vale a few weeks before.
Yeah, I mean, let's be honest, that goal does a lot of heavy lifting for this.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
Because he did hit that hard. All right, let's open it. I want it on X. Who's done it? Someone's going to say Hatswell. We've already ruled Hatswell out, I think. We think we've already ruled him out. I think he scored like a stupid back post header at like 2 miles an hour.
A little looper.
Yeah, ruin your stat.
Do you think at the other end of this, like, maybe I'm just thinking of one of his goals, but like Joe Ironside's got the lowest velocity. Feels like a lot of his sort of scrapped in. Obviously, I'm thinking of the header at Pompey as well.
Lowest.
This is really going off topic, by the way.
No, this is great. We've got all summer long to figure this thing out.
Well, we can do a special
Tom,
pod, the Velocity pod.
What speed did Ironside's goal at Newcastle going at roughly?
Oh, that's great stuff.
That's great stuff, isn't it?
It's been a while for that.
It has been a while for that.
Yeah. I didn't see either Ryan Loft's goals either, so do you want to take the piss out of me for that?
Tom, at half time, at Newcastle in the 56th minute, what were you getting at the bar?
Here we go.
Just realised I hadn't done it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Fucking hell. If you'd have asked me on the evening of that, I probably would have been able to tell you. You're asking more than 2 years later. Yeah, no chance.
I assume you got a nice beer or something, did you?
I might have done, yeah.
Yeah.
It wasn't my first choice, though. Can I be honest with you?
I'm pretty sure he had a glass of Malbec, mate.
He was doing a little tasting. He had a little flight, didn't he? That's why it took him so long. Do you know where else you can get a lovely red? You know by now, King Street Cellar, 99 King Street, CB1, 1LD, UTAS 10% off online and in store all summer long as well. All right, let's do this retained list, boys, to wrap the pod up.
Are we in charge of it?
Yeah, we're doing it right now.
Yeah. Bin them all off.
Okay, so this is what we've currently got written down as contracted for 25-26. Goalkeeper ends there. Defenders: Gibbons, Job, Rossi, Watts. Midfield, we've got Brophy, Gardner, Smith, Hoddle, McConnell. Up top, the triplet of Counder, Lavery, and Loft. So out of contract are Chadwick, Morosi, Stevens, Andrew, Liam Bennett, Scott Malone, Michael Morrison, Jubralokadina, Barton, Cousins, Digby, Kai, Stevenson, Thomas, Kachunga, and
or is he Kachunga?
Good point. Fair point. Yeah. I think, Tom, let's start with you because I think you've been doing a little bit of scheming on this. Let's do it like this. Out of those out of contract players, who are you keeping? Who are you offering a deal to?
So, I would offer a contract to Liam Bennett. I'd give Morrison another year. I'd give Digby another year. And I'd give Kai another year.
And Kachunga, if we just assume Kachunga's out of contract.
No, he's gone.
He's gone.
Unfortunately.
Awkward at the sponsors' lunch next year when he's still there, mate.
We're not sponsoring him next year.
Look, let's be very clear. At most, one of us will be there.
Yeah.
I think Bennett's fairly obvious. I mean, and we have been critical of him at times this season and last season as well, but pretty obviously there's a decent player in there somewhere. And if nothing else, you offer him a deal so you get a tribunal fee if he does go elsewhere. Morrison, I think, has been okay, really, this season. I don't think he's been brilliant. I think he's shown enough to think that with maybe a lower level playing against a lesser quality of forward, that he can do a job. He's also really keen to stay, which I think is important. He's one of the few leaders in that dressing room, and I'll keep him for that reason. Digby as well, I think, similar sort of reasons, really. I'm not sure he'd be as desperate to stay as someone like Morrison would be, but I think he's been a really important player for us, and he's a leader in that dressing room, which I think is for someone like Harris, he's going to need his generals, so to speak. I just think Kai's good. I think he's a good player.
Harris loves him as well. He's definitely staying.
Yeah, I think. I think I'll probably keep Kai. Again, another one, I guess, might have desires on another contract in League One, maybe. But again, it's about where you're getting it, I suppose. So yeah, 4 out of the release list get another deal if I'm in charge.
Casper, any differences there? Maybe the one I'm looking at is Morosi.
Morosi. You left Morosi out. I think of all the keeper plight that we have. I mean, we don't have much to go on. Let's be very clear.
Yeah.
Literally, bloke played about 40 minutes of football, and we've decided he's.
He did come with brilliant reviews from a host of League One clubs, so I'm sort of giving it a bit of that. But I take your point. Continue.
On the basis that Lofty came with terrible reviews.
Exactly. Which all proved totally accurate.
Yeah, probably Morosi. I would probably add to that list. There's certainly no one I'm taking off it. I'll probably keep Barton. We had this on WhatsApp in the week, didn't we? Mostly with Barton, it's just upside. Like, he'll be cheap. I described it on WhatsApp with you guys. He's like exactly the sort of young player that everyone keeps saying we need to be signing from like local clubs, if you know what I mean. So if you sign someone like Barton now from Mildenhall or whatever on Newmarket, you'd be like, oh, interesting stuff. So I think because he's cheap, an easy person to retain. Yeah, I probably agree with Kai, to be fair. He's shown a lot under Harris in the last few weeks. So I would say, which has probably done enough. But yeah, I don't think you can make a strong case for anyone else on that list.
No, I agree.
I saw quite a lot of people in our mentions on X.
George Thomas.
Yeah, George Thomas.
Loads.
Oh no, I mean,
No, like a
No.
disproportionate amount though. Like I
No.
can't believe it. It's the same people who have saying that we need to like scrap and start again. It's like there's the center of your problem is a player like him. Unfortunately, can't stay fit. We've had
yeah,
it proven to us.
he can't stay fit. The
Can't
injury
stay fit.
record isn't good enough. I think there is or was, let's say, a good footballer in there. I think when he was fit, he didn't show it enough. If I'm totally honest, it's a
I
long
agree with
time
you.
ago.
Casper, I think it goes back to your point earlier on. Like, Smith and Gardner have deals, whether we like it or not.
Well,
We're
yeah,
able to
and
shift
that's
them.
it.
So then that's it. That's your quota, I think.
Yeah, and assume you're keeping Digby as well. I know Digby's not in that
I would keep
bracket,
Digby.
right? Because he's been
Yeah,
pretty
yeah.
fit. But if you're keeping, well, we are keeping Gardner and Smith seemingly, and you're keeping Digby, that's enough, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's enough retention. Like there were too many squads this season where it was like, oh my god, it's March and we're starting 8 players who were here last season. Like, how has this happened? So,
Yeah.
There is
use this as an opportunity to not do that.
there is a train of thought as well. Just play devil's advocate a little bit. That since Neil Harris has come in, we have been a relatively well functioning league bottom end League One team. I say relatively well functioning. A point a game, it probably there or thereabouts maybe keeps you up, or at least gives you a shout of staying up in League One. Maybe there's an argument that that's an all right level to be going down with, if that makes sense. So you get rid of a few and replace with good quality where we've lacked it in certain areas, for example, up front, for example, in the middle of the park, and try and keep as much of it as similar as possible. There's not an opinion that I have, to be honest. There's obviously my list would suggest, but there's maybe a little bit of it in that. And
Yeah, maybe. Maybe there's like you can almost pair people up in here in the sense like Kai and Kachunga. At most, you've got to keep one of them. Maybe like even Malone and Andrew. Like Malone's been such a stalwart for Harris in the past. Maybe there's that leadership thing in Malone as well. But it all comes with the caveat of going and signing other players in those positions. I think, right? I don't think you can go into the season with Malone and Andrew as your first choice left backs if you're following your train of thought, Tom, which I don't agree with as well.
I think I think Danny Andrew did any hope he had of getting a new contract away with the way that he defended Burton's winner. Truly soft.
Of the players in contract, is there anyone that you would try if this is how it works to shift to move on?
Lofty stays, okay.
that stays.
Not only is he the highest velocity, I think good friend Mark Berry described him as the most entertaining Cambridge United footballer of all time.
Not for good reasons.
Is he not entertaining?
He is entertaining, you're right, but you just went on a really good tirade about why that shouldn't be the principle of
but he's entertaining. Like, just keep him.
I mean, I think in all seriousness, we'd all try and shift him on, wouldn't we? I mean, I'm not sure.
Move him on.
Seriously,
who comes in for him? Genuinely,
what are the logistics of that must be quite difficult because famously he's on quite a long contract.
I generally don't think I'll try and do it. I also think
there is a mad world.
I think there's no, I don't think they will. I think they'll retain him. I think there's a world where in a unit of 4 strikers at League 2 level, he might be passable.
As the fourth best.
As probably as your 4th choice striker.
Definitely
I genuinely believe that. Definitely is your 4th choice striker.
Yeah. But then you think if you've got Lavery in that side for probably half the season, if Lavery's one of them,
you joker.
How many times have you played this season?
Not Lavery. Half. I don't know.
I don't know, Casper. I think 14? He was out for 4 months, mate.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think we're going to have to do this live.
You riff while I figure it out.
Okay. All right. Anyway, I was just trying to make a point that Lavery's going to be out quite a lot, so suddenly he becomes your 3rd choice. And if Harris has been prone to playing 2 up top at points, so suddenly he is featuring quite heavily still. And I think if we're serious about really dominating League 2, if there's any world in which we can shift him on, I would be in favour of it. Rossi?
14, mate. 14 games. There you go.
14. Oh, it's even less than I thought. Oh, right. I thought you were saying it was more than that.
No, I was saying less.
Oh,
Yeah.
mate, yeah. Well, that's even more in my point then. I thought he'd featured a bit more earlier in the
All
season.
right, I thought you'd been a joker when you say play half the season. There's no
No,
way, mate.
I
Yeah,
thought you.
right,
Yeah, right. We're
right.
on the same page. Anyway, Tom, you talked about Rossi a minute ago. Would you try shift him on at all, or do you think there's a player in there in League Two?
Yeah, I think in my release list, that includes Okadina. Um, in an ideal world, we would keep Okadina and we would get rid of Watts and Rossi because I think they're both not very good. Particularly Watts, I think is just I don't know. I don't know. I don't see it. So yeah, I would. I'd try and move Rossi on. Like I appreciate like a lot of this is idealistic because it's probably gonna be quite hard to shift three players who are under contract in Loft, Rossi, and Watts, who have just not shown a lot, to be honest. Um, so that's the difficult bit. Um, I also think the difficulty is in some of the key positions, like the players who've got under contract will probably really limit what we can do. So like centre back, um, and in centre mid as well. Like Gardner and Smith are surely the two highest paid players in the squad, or two of the most the highest paid players in the squad. One of them we've not seen a single second of this season, and you have to assume it might be treading on eggshells a little bit around next season. Smith we're still very on the fence about. You know, jury's still out about how much value he can actually add, even at a lower level. There's a player in there somewhere, of course, but we've not really seen it consistently. And at centre back, obviously, we just talked about Watson and Rossi, who've looked at best quite shaky when they have played, and Rossi's been injured for the vast majority of the time he's been here anyway. So there is that. And in an ideal world, you kind of shift them and bring two more in each bit. Probably not easy, to be honest. So yeah, I'd probably try and shift Rossi and if possible Watts, but I'm just not confident that's going to be too possible. Um, or easy anyway. I'm sure there'll be a level at which you could take an offer, but we're going to want to be recouping some of the wages that we're paying to them, I suppose. Um, yeah, a bit of a tricky one. The forward sitch is quite interesting as well. Because we've got one in Loft who we're pretty confident isn't good enough, one in Lavery who we're pretty sure isn't fit enough, and then that leaves you with a lot of pressure on two centre forwards to come in. I think to complete a set of four who have to make up probably the lion's share of the goals that we're going to score next season.
Well,
Which,
luckily we're infamously good at signing strikers, so
well, to be
I
fair,
wouldn't worry about that.
to be fair, not recently, but you'd say to me, Anundaloo, Loft, I'd say
Smith,
Mullen,
Mullen,
Smith,
yeah,
Ironside. But
true.
look, we'll just have to see. I imagine we signed all three of them back. That'd be class.
Well, Mullen is available apparently.
Oh, jeez.
Um, do it on vibes, Caspel. Come on.
Oh, God.
All right,
Speaking
look.
of players on the way down who've had a bad recent track record with injuries.
Yeah. Right, let's wrap this up. I think it's worth ending on, I guess, a bit of a positive. We actually started with a few notes of positivity and optimism for next season. Caspel, Harris's post-match interview. If anyone listening hasn't listened to it, I would recommend going and giving it a listen. I actually listened to this, and it's what made me feel the most optimistic about next season in just how much he's talking the same talk as we have been for so much of the season, so publicly and honestly. Maybe there is still just a bit of a, it's not Gary Monk and it's such a different tact and interview to Gary Monk. But to me, it gave me a lot of optimism thinking about next season to have this guy in charge.
I'm just disappointed he didn't storm off again, mate. That was box office a few weeks. That
What
was just,
brilliant moment of such a shit season.
just these are the highlights, aren't they? Really?
Thank you, gentlemen.
So good. Oh God. Look, it was nice. It was refreshing, I guess, but we've got to be careful. They all fall into the same trap. It's brutal being a football manager because you've got to cut these, every Thursday and then every post match, and it's pretty hard to avoid just saying the same kind of shit over and over again, for obvious reasons, because some stuff gets left unsaid anyway. Harris maybe is, it doesn't leave too much unsaid. It's a bit of a free hit for him, right? Like when the club gets relegated, mostly made up of a squad that he hasn't constructed, is his best opportunity to kind of put some pelters out there. The thing you always got to think about is if next season does start quite badly, will that style of press conference get, will that style of interview
No,
get quite wearing
it's
quite
very fair.
quickly? Probably.
It's a fair point. Yeah, yeah.
So I do enjoy it. I think it's a little bit pantomime, maybe. I think he's probably seen a bit of an opportunity, if you know what I mean. So it is nice to hear him talking. And yes, he has a fairly aligned, I guess, appraisal of the challenges we've got. Um, he's just got to be careful, right? I mean, he can bend this dressing room to a reasonable degree, but he's got to keep that dressing room next year on side, right? So it'll be interesting, I guess, to see what he does with it in a League Two season when it's September, October. If we don't start very well, not sure it'd be the smartest thing for him to necessarily follow that tack, right? So it is a good interview. It is interesting. I don't want to hear 5 of those by mid-September next year, though, because it says something's gone badly wrong, right?
Yeah, fundamentally he can't, because I think the reason he can be maybe so like loose with his criticism, so public, is because it's not his squad and he knows the situation he's been brought in, right? From August
Yeah.
onwards, you're absolutely right. There won't be the liberty for him to do this, because fundamentally he's also spoken about the director of football, Mark Bonner, and how much he wanted to work with him, and how that partnership is part of the reason why he came back. So he doesn't even have that to sort of fall back on if he's trying to slate.
Imagine if he does.
Just under the bus straight away.
We lost our first 4 games and he just buses the squad, and August bank holiday next year, we're like 23rd in League Two or something.
Oh, it'd be a laugh. Tom, anything that you want to end with on the post match? Did you get a sense of sort of optimism? Were you pleased with hearing him talk like this to end the season?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's just refreshing to hear it come from someone who actually knows what they're talking about.
Yeah,
to be honest, and not just from us all the time. Yeah, I think look, we're gonna go into a division next season which is not infested with sharks. And if you look at the current state of play, which is a relatively bleak read, I would say. But one thing of the clubs that are confirmed, I don't think there's a better manager in there than Neil Harris. You'd maybe venture Paul Warne at MK Dons, but much for muchness, in my opinion. I think Harris has shown so much in his ability to get the best out of what he's got available to him. I think that's got to give you optimism going into next season. And I'm kind of excited to see how it all unfolds, to be honest, because I think Bonner, maybe with nothing necessarily to back it up, because it is obviously a new role for him. I think he's gonna be really good in the role that he's got. Just got a sneaking suspicion that might be a bit of a masterstroke, bringing him back to the club with Harris. Again, another one that might age like milk, but we'll have to see.
I can't wait.
But yeah, I agree with what Casper's saying, and as much as I'm talking about the positives of having a manager like Neil Harris, I mean, we do have to accept as well. Like, it's not been perfect. We've not been brilliant.
No, yeah,
like it hasn't been scintillating. Like there have been times there where we've actually been quite poor. The one thing that he does have a bit of a habit of in his interviews, which I've started to notice, is he does really try and not tell a different story from what's happened, because he's been very blunt about the issues that he sees with the way the squad's been built up and some of the issues that we've got, like as a more global thing. But in terms of individual games, there was a bit in there where he talked about like the amount of really good chances we created against Burton. I mean, I watched the game. Admittedly, it was on a very, very hooky stream. Maybe I was watching a different game, but I'm pretty sure it was the same fixture.
It's what was that Slovakian game.
Tom gets confused. Lee McEverly swings a free kick over the goal. He's like, "Come on!"
Do you know what? I was going to say that because I watched the highlights of the Burton game in preparation for this, and I was like,
"Of course you did."
Yeah, which obviously is totally pointless because we've not talked about the game at all. But I was just looking at the first result, which says Burton Cambridge on YouTube, is that glorious night when Lee McEverly stuck one of the top bins to turn it around. But anyway, back to Neil Harris. Yeah, like it hasn't been perfect, and we do have to acknowledge that. I know there's been a few instances where like substitutions we've not been too happy about. I think the use of Josh Stokes at times has been a little confusing. And clearly there is, obviously we could have got more from this season, he came in with, he's facing, I think to put it politely, an uphill task with not long to go, but there was enough of the season we maybe could have given it a better go, to be honest. The way that we performed in key games, like particularly The derby was, I think, was quite disappointing, to be honest. Stevenage obviously isn't a derby, but we were very poor that night as well. Um, and you look at instances like Barnsley away, for example, 2 points dropped from nowhere. Wigan away, at least 1 point dropped. These things have all happened under Neil Harris's management. But as a general rule, I think we've been better. We've been harder to beat. We've been much more competitive in games. And it doesn't take that much for me to translate that down to a lower level with, I think, again, I don't have anything to substantiate this, but I think will be a pretty competitive budget for League Two. Because I think we'll look at what Port Vale have done. They went down in a similar sort of guys, really. They appointed a manager they thought that's a bit of a coup in Darren Moore, who was
similar
not
sort
quite
of time as we appointed Harris.
similar sort of time, similar-ish sort of situation. Wasn't quite able to turn it around, but they backed him properly to go out and do the job they believed he was capable of, and it's resulted in promotion. And
so you're saying we need to go sign Lawrence Olage, just to be clear.
Listen, if anyone can get the best out of him, Neil Harris can, I guess. No, let's see. But yeah, look, there has to be optimism next. We've got a really good manager at the helm. We've got someone who genuinely deeply cares about the football club in a role that I think will be quite good at in Mark Bonham. We've got owners that are going to continue to back the football club and continue to try and progress it. Harris mentioned it a lot in his post-match. Sometimes you've got to take a step back to take two forwards. At this point, I'll be happy taking one back, take one forward, and get us back to where we're at. But yeah, quiet positivity around next season in what has been a very murky water of a season to cover.
Yeah. Well, look, that's the positivity we wanted to end with. It's been a bumper show. Thanks for sticking with it, Casper. I've noticed that as we've been recording, all of our rooms have just progressively descended into darkness.
Couldn't be bothered to get up and switch the light on. That's the mood I'm in right now. I've just gone full UTAS 10. Just gonna finish a bottle of wine and sit in the dark and think about League Two.
Wait for next season to roll around. Tom, always a pleasure, mate, and see you soon.